Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show, and I am very happy to have Melinda Colton here in studio. She is the newest addition to the Park City School District as the Director of Communications. Welcome. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Joe.
Yes. This is probably one of the hardest jobs, I think, out there in the world of PIOs, public information officers, and what have you. When we're dealing with our children, there's nothing people care more about. Right?
That's exactly right, yes.
And, as the point person for the communications for a school, that means that you're a very important role. Mm-hmm. Talk about, first of all, your coming into this role, where you're coming from, and how we ended up with you here in Park City.
Okay. Well, I started as a journalist, and I actually really loved that, but I realized that I really only like sharing the good part of the news.
Yeah, me too.
So that was really a nice switch to go into public relations, and so I have worked for 3 different universities. Most recently, I was at Utah Valley University as their Director of Public Relations, and realized that it just wasn't quite a great fit for me. Before that, I was with Jordan School District as their Communications Director for almost 13 years, and I kept thinking that was the best job I ever had. I have 2 kids of my own, a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I have always loved working in public education. It's one of those things I feel really passionate about. So when I saw this opening, and I had already resigned from UVU, I thought, wow, I want to get back into this, and I feel like I'm home again now.
That's
so
great.
it's been a really great fit the last few weeks.
You mentioned being at Jordan School District, and of course, I think you were there, if I understand it correctly. I'm not 100% sure. If you were there during the time of the split with
I was.
the other school district, that was a tenuous time for sure. I can't even imagine. That was not the good news time, right? That was pretty tough.
Probably one of the most challenging parts of my career in public relations. At one time, I worked for 3 boards of education.
Wow.
The old district, the new district, and the combined district. And so it became a really difficult time. But we survived it.
Yeah. You're ready for new challenges based on that one.
I am, and to be in a district that's the size of Park City, I mean, I already have been to every school. I already know all the principals' names, and it's so nice to be able to get a little bit deeper into this aspect of helping us communicate in better ways and more effective ways with our parents and with our taxpayers.
And with the parents is probably the most critical, obviously.
Definitely.
And when we look back at last year, this time, the conversations we were having with our parents was a very difficult one, because we were talking about the loss of a student.
Yes.
And we're on the anniversary of that today, of losing our first. And unfortunately, as much as we'd like to think this is a isolated incident, we will at some point lose another student at one of these schools, either from an accident or from suicide or something. This has got to be, for you, top of mind, I imagine.
It is top of mind. I remember when it happened last year, having this conversation with my own 2 sons, who were a little bit younger, but asking them, do you know how to get to the dark web? And I remember my 12-year-old saying, Mom, Google it or YouTube, and it's pretty easy to find those kinds of things. In the school district today, it's not something that we have forgotten, something that we will never forget. One thing we are doing in hopes of preventing this down the road, our theme this year, our focus as a school district is safe and healthy. And so starting today, on the anniversary of that terrible tragedy, we are beginning what's called Wellness Week. And that will be at Treasure Mountain Junior High from 4 to 5:30 every day. This week there's a different topic: wellness, mental health. And so parents, we invite them to come with their students, if they can, quickly after work or after school, to run over to the junior high, and there'll be a guest speaker, but there'll also be all kinds of booths set up by the different community resources that are there to help us, because this is not just something that as a school district we can prevent. We need the help of parents, of students, and of all of our community members. And so it's been a really great way for us to kind of bring everything together. Then in October, as we have National Safe Schools Week, we will have 2 weeks that we are dedicating to focusing on safe and healthy issues related to our schools.
Children have a lot of anxiety about school now.
They do.
It's hard, I think, especially if you're not a parent, to relate to this. But with the fact that we all have these,
right,
and kids are constantly communicating, but they're communicating only a certain portion of their life, and it's always the best part, supposedly.
Yes.
And we do it as parents too, right? Taking selfies of the thing that we like the most,
Right.
the place we like the most, and our best clothes, and our best, everything's great, right? And it
All the time.
creates, yeah, exactly. Our world's perfect,
Yes.
right? And so to someone else who might be struggling with the moment of it's not perfect,
Right.
The anxieties are immense compared to what we recall, aren't they?
They are.
Talk about, for a moment, you mentioned safe and healthy. That's certainly the big thrust with this, but what do we do to start to mitigate this other side of things, or this communication gap where we only see the very positive highlights?
It's about dialogue with one another. It's about having conversations. On October 5th, our very first Lunch and Learn, the superintendent will be going over our safety procedures. One of the things that I am most excited about, and as I research this district, one of the things we do very well is being innovative. And our counselors for our schools have spent the entire summer redoing how they're talking to kids. And so that is something that people will be seeing, and I think counselors are a great point, and we want to encourage parents, if they're not sure how to have that conversation, that we have counselors at our school to be able to help them have those conversations with their students.
We need to know what those conversations are that they're having on Twitter or
Right.
on Instagram
Right.
or Snapchat, which are the ones that we don't get to see because they're not shared. Once they're done, it's gone, right?
Right.
These are important conversations, and as you said, if you don't know how to get into them, there's a resource here.
There is.
When we look at the most difficult side of this, teen suicide, things like that, I've just got to think that from the perspective of adults, we've got to figure out a way to start to understand what's going on at that other level. Your mom and dad, you
Right.
don't understand, right? That's what they like to tell
yeah.
us. This is, I'm certainly part of that re-education of how we're going to talk.
Well, and we also, one thing I think, and the superintendent has already talked about this, and she'll be on again later this week, and that is we've hired Dr. Ben Belknap, who has a tremendous background in things like we just talked about: wellness, safety, health, suicide, counseling, psychology. He brings a tremendous wealth of experience, and he is the one I think that is really going to, as our associate superintendent of student wellness, really help us learn or relearn how to have those kinds of conversations.
And start bridging some gaps.
Even if our children don't want to come to us. And, there's all kinds of lists, the top 10 signs, what to look for. And sometimes kids don't always exhibit those signs. And so I think we can really look to him to give some really great guidance as this year progresses. And we're just getting started in the school year. And I'm really anxious to get this information out there as we come up with it and as we decide that we need to provide that with parents.
I'm hoping that maybe people take on one important role individually, which is not necessarily their kids. Because when you're a parent, you know this, and maybe you'll remember this if we maybe associate it with teaching your kids to ski. You don't want to teach your own kids to ski because they don't want to learn from you.
They don't listen to you,
They're not going
right.
to listen to you.
Yes.
Exactly. And typically we found that kids in school, school-age kids, look to another parent, not their own, their friend's parent,
Right.
or an aunt or uncle, somebody
Or a teacher that they
disassociated,
like, yes.
with their parents as that person to help them, to guide them. So I think it's important that we all take on the role of being okay with that, with being a village, right?
Right.
That it couldn't be more important, I don't think.
And I think any adult that our students trust is just another great positive influence they can have in their lives. So we hope it's a teacher or a counselor or another parent
Right.
or the principal, whatever and whoever that adult is and whatever role they play in that student's life. We just want students to be able to talk. And sometimes they won't talk. And so we have to find those ways to have those conversations with them, be them unpleasant or not.
Right, and that's the thing, you have to have it regardless.
You do.
We have just a moment left. I want to talk about one last thing, and that is all the changes with the schools as far as maybe building new properties, tearing down,
Right.
shifting. There's some real serious conversations to have about that.
Right.
What are some of the things that are kind of on the list of discussions coming up?
Well, as the public knows, the board has decided to put a hold on the bond. We can do a better job of communicating what that's going to be down the road.
Vision is, right?
Correct. Speaking of vision, October 2nd from 6 to 8 at the Blair Education Center at the hospital, we are going to host what's called our first strategic planning community meeting. That's where we invite all the public, students, parents, taxpayers, senior citizens, anyone who wants to come, whether or not they have children in the school system, to come and give their input, to help us make a pathway as the Board of Education determines what their mission is, what their vision is, to have a clear path to, do we want small schools? Do we not want portables at our schools? Do we want smaller classes? Do we want to pay teachers more? What are our goals? What does the public see as the vision for this school district in the next 5 to 7 years? And that involves engaging the public. And I think we try to do that, but we can do a better job of doing that. This next year will be devoted to those kinds of meetings. Out of this meeting, we'll form subcommittee meetings, and it's my job to make sure whatever comes out of those meetings gets communicated to our parents, to our public. And they will see some new communication tools that we have out there that I hope they'll take advantage of. But I'm so excited to be here. I'm so happy to be back in public education. Huge advocate of public education in the state of Utah. It's a pretty great thing.
Yeah, and you're walking into one of the arguably the very best school districts in this state. So
I agree.
Welcome.
I thank you.
It's great to have you, and I want to thank you for joining us. I look forward to having lots of conversations with you in the future, of course, as we talk about so many important topics with our school district, with our students, with you as taxpayers and parents. Right here on Park City Television. That's where you'll come for all the information that you need and where to go next to continue being a part of education here in Park City. We'll be back right after this.